I've been going through a divorce with a man that I was with for almost a decade of my life. I'm the one who filed. I hired a lawyer at the end of July because I no longer fucking trusted him. In this lovely state of Virginia, you have to go through a separation process before you can file for divorce. Because we didn't have any kids, our separation process was going to be 6 months before we could file for divorce. I was able to file for divorce before the 6 months because I had proof of adultery. It feels so nice to be able to talk about this shit. I have never been cheated on before. To experience this while you're married, whew, it's been awful. It has made me question everything. And if you're like, Anna, how did you find out about adultery? If you've been here prior, my whole divorce video going viral on Instagram, you would know that I was trying to help him gain a following on Twitch so that he could pursue his dream being a Twitch streamer. I asked people on my TikTok and Instagram to go and support him, to follow him. She was a mutual follower of mine on TikTok. Her and I followed one another probably a year. We supported each other's content creation and everything. Obviously, I posted about being married, and she's also married as well. She became his biggest supporter on Twitch. It didn't really raise any alarm bells for me because I trusted him. I thought our marriage was solid. I never, ever, 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 ever think that he was gonna cheat on me or stray away from the marriage, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure he probably has every validation for why he did what he did. I'm sure she has every validation in her head of why she did what she did. And personally, I can give a fuck about either of those stories. At the end of the day, you're sitting here telling people on your stream you won the wife lottery when you didn't even fucking love me anymore. When him and I did split, he moved out towards the end of May. She blocked me on social media and I saw his location to the area that she lives in. We followed one another. We supported each other's content creation. We commented on each other's videos. It's like she really wanted to support my husband too. And he moved out at the end of May. He never turned his tracking off. I was able to see where he went for his Airbnb. After his month stay was up at his Airbnb, he moved in with her. Before people even came to me with evidence, I had already put 2 and 2 together. I knew. I fucking knew. Then the evidence came in. Presented that evidence to my lawyer. I had a case of adultery. Was able to bypass the 6-month probation time that Virginia requires before you file for divorce. That was so fun to do. To have my best friend, who we made vows to one another, to essentially at the end of the day break every single vow, every single promise, and step out of a marriage. There's been a lot that I've been dealing with behind the scenes. Finally gonna be able to start talking about it now. Am I talking bad about you, or is what you did bad and I'm talking about it? I also went through the process of hiring a lawyer because he was trying to not pay me for some shared bills, trying to gaslight me into thinking that he was living on his own and he was struggling when I knew that he was living with her. I gently exposed him of that. All of a sudden I got paid the money that I was owed at that time. He did not keep up with that. And we're not even talking about the trauma has developed because of this. The abandonment that I have felt. I'm literally moving to an area we didn't know anybody. You took me away from my community. You took me away from my therapist, then you dumped me in the middle of nowhere. That's pretty fucking traumatizing. My next therapist is gonna be pretty fucking busy as I try to process trauma this whole situation has caused me so that I can eventually have a healthy relationship one day. That man was my best fucking friend, and this is what he did. Honestly, I never saw this coming. This was very much, the rug was pulled out from beneath my feet. I thought this man loved me. I loved him, took my vows fucking seriously. I was gonna do whatever it took to make sure that our marriage worked, especially because I came from a divorced household. I did not want to follow my parents' footsteps. I wanted to be married once and make it fucking work. We promised one another that we would communicate, promised one another that if anything were to ever come up, if we developed any issues in our marriage, that we would talk about it. He didn't talk about it, and he robbed us of that. And then later admitted if he did bring it up, that maybe we could have worked on our marriage and maybe we could have saved it. If that's not the biggest fucking backhand, I don't know what is. He was in active therapy up until we moved out of Florida, and his therapist didn't even know that this was going on. Not even being honest with a therapist about what's going on with you. What the fuck are you doing? One of his ex-girlfriends cheated on him. Like, you know what it's like to be cheated on, and then you do the same thing in a marriage. To him, it's validated because he no longer loved me. That was news to me. Of course, there's 2 sides to every story. I'm sure his head, what he has done is validated. Apparently, he was living in a shell of a marriage, never communicated about it. Me being a wife, having a husband, building our life together, it meant everything to me. Am I a perfect person? No, God, no. I'm not a perfect person, but I've never claimed to be so. I loved him unconditionally, accepted all forms of him, supported his dreams, thought that he did the same for me. That's just not the case, because you don't do this to someone that you love and respect. He has lost the privilege to my kindness a long time ago, and now I need to learn how to trust somebody again. I need to undo the fuckery that he has done so that I can have a chance at having a healthy relationship in the future. He was my best friend. He was supposed to protect me, not add to my trauma. I'm grieving a life that is now no longer mine. He killed me, killed everything about me, and he left my body in the street. And then I came and picked her up, buried her. I am stepping forward in this new journey. It's not even a new chapter, it's a whole entire new book. It's page 1, completely starting over. One of the most challenging things that I've had to go through during this process, wrapping my head around the fact that it's not my fault. I'd really beat myself up at the beginning of all of this. My husband fell out of love with me and I didn't even notice. Like, how did I not notice? How did I not notice? The actions did not reflect not loving me. And going online and streaming X amount of people on the internet saying that he won the wife lottery. I'm so lucky to have me. You know, he talked about mental health, communication. As those words are coming out of his mouth, he doesn't feel that way. He doesn't love me. He's telling strangers that he does, and he shows it. He doesn't feel it. It really fucks with you. How do you trust someone after this? The person that I trusted with myself, the person that I told my inner child that we can trust, that we're safe, and he's not going to do what dad did to mom. And a few words out of his mouth, it was all over. I have so much to say. I went viral over my divorce video. Thousands of you started following me because you related to that somehow. You related to starting your life over, related to the heartbreak, you related to the divorce, related to grieving someone who is still alive. You guys have literally saved me. My best friends have saved me. Music has saved me. Nights that I just screamed into the void for the universe to end my life because I could not carry the pain. I could not carry it. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want to carry it.
If you have ever wondered what it is like to be in a coma, well, look no further. This is the video for you. I was in a medically induced coma for roughly 3.5 to 4 months at the age of 14 years old. I am now 22, so this happened about 7 years ago. So I will describe how it was for me personally in my experience. This is a medically induced coma, so not a coma where people just fall into a coma themselves. Mine was done by the doctors in order to preserve my body and help my body heal itself. So, well, how did you end up in a coma? So basically, I can go into more detail about this. But basically, I got the flu, then pneumonia, then sepsis, and then MRSA, all in my lungs. So I was fucked, basically. No one should live through that, but I did. So that is why they decided to put me in a coma. And yeah, I was also on life support, dialysis, breathing machines, feeding tubes, GI tubes, trach, the list goes on and on and on. So basically, I'm going to start with the feeling of being in a coma. So for me personally, it feels as if, you know, when you're laying in bed and you're in a very uncomfortable position. That's how it felt for me, but you can't move. So you're just laying there, and they say, oh, people can't hear in comas. Yes, they can. Oh, yes, they can. They can also feel. So there is that. So basically, you're laying in this position where you cannot move. You can hear the doctors. I wouldn't say all of the time. I would say about 50% of the time you're mentally coherent and you want to scream, cry, all of these emotions, but you can't. So that is what it feels like to be in a coma. That's just like the basis feeling. Yes. So you're trying to move every muscle in your body, and the doctors would say, oh, move your hands. Why are you telling me to move my hands if you know that I can't? But I would still try. The only thing that I could really do is like clench my jaw, but I did not know that I had like a intubation tube in, so I don't know if I was biting on that or whatnot, but that is the only physical thing that I could do with my body. Okay, so let's get into the other 50%. So I already said that you can hear, you can feel, basically you're just full of all of these emotions and uncomfortableness that you cannot act on, like can't even fucking cry about the situation. You just gotta sit there and take it. So the other 50%, this is just for me personally. My brain was trying to come up with theories as to why are we so messed up right now? What is going on? Because I didn't know. So I say these are dreams, but they felt more as if realities that I was living through. Like these dreams were so real that it felt like that's what was happening, you know? Because your brain has to come up with a theory to explain. So, first theory that I had was, a little backstory, I always wanted to go into the army. I wanted to be an army girl. That's just who I was back then. Very tough, very outgoing, very much wanted to win over the boys. So the place that I lived had like a base. My stepdad was ex-military or retired through the military, whatnot. So we would go on the base all of the time. So I was very familiar with the military base. So my first dream was I was in the military on the base, and the base got raided, and I hit in a bush, pow, got shot in the freaking face. Whole side of my face was blown off. I think that dream started from the very beginning because I was in an ambulance, and I think I connected the ambulance ride to that. I don't know, but that was my first dream. Lovely. The second dream was when I was in the hospital. I thought, I'm a little psychotic, okay? I don't know, my brain's a little messed up in there. I was thinking, oh, yeah, my mom just took me to like a rundown hospital, draining me of all my blood so she could harvest my organs. Obviously, she's gonna harvest my organs. So that was my second dream, and that's what I thought was happening. And then the third dream, I don't know if you can. Right here, they put me on life support. But obviously I didn't know I was being put on life support. So I'm like, oh yeah. My little brother took a pair of scissors and just stabbed me in the neck. That's what happened, right? I don't know. So those are the dreams that I had. I did have a spiritual experience though. I did. You guys don't have to believe me, but this is what happened to me personally. So my mom would tell me that I had like a code blue. If you don't know what that is, it's not good. Go look it up. But I had like a code blue every single day the first month that I was in the hospital. So I don't know if I was like really dying and I experienced this, but the first experience that I experienced was just love, warmth, acceptance, because I thought I was gonna die. So I was like, don't be sad, I'm ready for this. But the real spiritual experience that I had was, it was all like dark. I saw a huge tree, which is, don't look at that, the tree of life. I forget what exactly it's called in like the Greek terms, but it's the tree of life. And then I saw balls of energy, orbs of energy, all different colors floating around. So that is what I saw. So yeah, if you guys have any questions on anything else, let me know. I had to learn how to walk, talk, eat, drink. I had to learn all of these things again because of how deconditioned my body was. I couldn't even, I was laying down, I couldn't even lift my arm up because that's how weak I was. Oh, could you go to the bathroom on the toilet? No. I had a catheter in, and then they also put a tube in my butt. Freaky, yeah. So yeah, that happened as well. Very violating. But all of it is kind of a fever dream. I can't really comprehend how I went through all that. But also, I'm not looking for sympathy. I am glad that this happened to me.
Can someone please tell me how to press charges? Because I got scammed. This was the most expensive first date I've ever been on in my entire life. Let me tell you guys what happened, and can somebody please let me know where to go from here? So I ended up matching with this girl on Hinge. Super cute, super attractive, funny, witty. The text conversation was great. We FaceTimed once or twice. We finally decided to plan a date. And we decided, you know what, let's go out to a casual dinner. Think of like Chili's, Red Robin, but local. Nothing too expensive. Just a good first date spot. Gonna cost me less than $100. Or so I thought. Day of the date comes. We meet at the restaurant. We exchange highs. I open the door for her like a gentleman. We go, sit down, order our drinks, get some appetizers. We got sweet potato fries. We got jalapeno poppers. That's what they're called, right? And then we got some food. I ended up getting fajitas. She got a burger. And we had a really great date. There was no lull in conversation. She was funny. She was witty. We had good banter. I learned a ton about her. But at this point, the meal is coming to an end. And we ended up getting some dessert, just chatting it over, talking about second date plans already. Honestly, one of the better dates I've been on in a while. Oh my God, was I naive. So at this point, the waiter comes to bring the check over. Obviously, it's a first date. I'm going to pay the bill. So I go to pull out my wallet, and I'm looking for my card, and it's just not there. And I'm starting to panic a little bit because this is a first date, and I forgot the money. That's not how that's supposed to go. But after like 2 or 3 minutes of looking, I know she's trying to figure out what's going on. So I just fess up and tell her. I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure where my card is. I still want to pay for the date. Can I please Venmo you? It was like $95 with tip. And do you mind paying? I want to still pay for the full date. I just don't know where my card is. I'm sorry. And to my surprise, she was really understanding. I sent her the money. She paid the bill. It was a little bit awkward. You know, the waiter coming back over and her giving her card, but besides the point. And we wrap up the date. We say goodbye. We have first date or second date plans for the upcoming week. And we go about our way. I go home. We text a little. Nothing abnormal. I go to bed. Casual night. I get woken up at 8 a.m. by a phone call, and it's the fraud department of my credit card company. I'm confused. It's a 1-800 number. I don't answer. They leave a voicemail. And in the voicemail, they try to explain that $800 worth of charges were added to my card last night between 11 and 2 a.m. Imagine my surprise when I listened to this voicemail knowing I don't have my card. I couldn't find it at dinner last night. So it clicks in my brain. Oh my God, somebody stole my card. And I'm panicking. Everything is running through my mind like, where could I have left it? Did I leave it at work? I'm ripping my apartment apart. And then it clicks. I went to the bathroom at dinner and left my wallet. And when I said, hey, if I Venmo you the money, are you okay paying for dinner? She was happy. She was like, oh my God, yeah, I don't mind at all. Of course. I thought she was just being a nice person. So I go to text her and say, like, craziest thing happened to me. I think somebody stole my card and spent a bunch of money at a bar. You know what happened to my text? It came back green. It never delivered. I go to check her Hinge profile. It's gone. What's the next logical step? Instagram. Blocked, deleted, can't find her account anywhere. It's very clear that when I went to the bathroom, she stole my card. And I don't know what to do about it. She deleted all of her stuff. I can't find her anywhere. I can't even find her on Venmo. She blocked me on Venmo. So I get back on the phone with the fraud department. I call them back and I explain like, hey, that was not me. I don't really know how to prove it to you, but that wasn't me. And they tell me my card is locked for 30 days pending an investigation. I don't have a way to pay for anything anymore. I'm currently on the way to the bank to go take out cash with my ATM card because I don't know what else to do.
2008, Romekia Sims and James Lee met at a basketball game in Clinton in Maryland. James was working as a security guard and Romekia was there, I believe, just attending the game. But the entire night was spent with them giving each other specific looks. Sooner than later, they struck up a conversation and the rest is history. Throughout the following week, they began talking more and more. They started dating and they started talking about the future that they could have together. It was all new and fresh. It was something really exciting. And by 2010, Romekia found out that she was pregnant. The two of them were very excited. Although their living situations were not ideal for starting a family, Romekia was still living at home and James had a roommate because their finances were not quite where they needed them to be in order to move out. But that aside, they were really looking forward to starting a new life together and creating a little family of their own. And then in August of 2011, they welcomed a baby boy into the world that they named Gierre Lee. And from the moment that baby entered the world, he was surrounded by nothing but love, mainly from his parents. They were overjoyed now being a family of 3. They ended up moving into their own 2-bedroom apartment eventually, and that was great. And every other family member was also over the moon now having a new baby in the family. All the aunts and uncles and the cousins and everyone spent as much time as they could with this baby because he was just a bundle of joy. However, the little happy bubble that they were in would not last forever because in 2013, cracks started to show in Romekia and James's relationship. They started bickering more than usual about things that may sound silly but very normal things like chores and responsibility and bills and all that kind of stuff. And by 2014, they made the difficult decision to separate. James moved out. Romekia and her baby stayed living in that 2-bedroom apartment. And following the breakup, James knew that no matter the situation, he was always going to make sure to show up for his son. He continued to stay in regular contact with them, but he also was helping out financially. He was showing up in every single way that he could. However, for Romekia, the same couldn't be said. She found herself struggling a lot. She wasn't only stressed out, but she was also extremely overwhelmed because she had a job. She was also attending school, all while trying to keep a social life with her friends and her family and raising a toddler. It was a lot, and it took a really big mental toll on her, and unfortunately, those struggles would lead to the unthinkable. By 2014, Romekia had lost her job, which only added on to the stress she was already feeling, and her loved ones started to notice a pretty big shift in her behavior. We later find out that this is also around the time when she said that she started hearing voices in her head. Romekia began feeling paranoid every single day at every hour of the day. She started to feel like someone was following her and out to get her, which only made her paranoia grow, and sooner than later, she also began having hallucinations. She would hear the doorbell ring when it wasn't ringing. She began seeing people standing outside of her apartment that were not really there, and she began to believe that people were stalking her and Gierre at night. One day in 2015, she called her mother in a panic, screaming into the phone that there were people trying to break into her house, trying to get to her and Gierre, and her mother rushed over to the apartment, only to find that Romekia and Gierre were safe inside and no one else was there. And after receiving CCTV footage from the apartment building, it was confirmed that no one had been there. No one had been there around her apartment. No one tried to break in. It was all part of Romekia's hallucinations. And throughout the following weeks, her hallucinations and delusions only started to get worse. Until Romekia was someone that her friends and family didn't even recognize anymore. She was scared all the time. She was always on edge. She never wanted to leave her apartment. She never wanted to leave her son. It was a very difficult time for everyone involved. And also in 2015, Romekia made a very similar call to James, panicking on the phone, telling him that people were trying to break down the door, that people were trying to come into the apartment to take Gierre. The phone call was so frantic that it made James's stomach sink. He was at work at the time, so he couldn't leave, but he immediately called Romekia's mom and asked her to rush over there, and she did. But as soon as she got there, it was the same thing. There were absolutely zero signs that someone had attempted to break in, and Romekia was inside, frightened, holding on to her baby in her arms, refusing to say anything. It was clear that she was in some form of distress. She was having a hard time even forming a sentence, and when her mom first arrived, she didn't even recognize her at first. It took her a while to realize that the lady that was standing in front of her was her own mom. That same day, Romekia's mom, Tasha, helped her into the car, and she drove her to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. She was extremely worried about her daughter, and she knew that whatever was going on would require medical attention. After a series of tests and observations, Romakia Sims was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and severe depression, and she was given medication for it. Medication that she very much needed, and even though it was really hard, her mom and James were glad that they were now aware of what was going on and they could help treat it. And they were very hopeful that the medication would help stabilize all of the voices in her head. Tasha, Romakia's mom, offered for her and Gierre to come and stay with her, understanding that that was probably what was going to be best for everyone. Not only so Tasha could help out in taking care of Gierre, but also so she could be there to make sure that Romakia was taking her medication every single day like she was supposed to. However, at the time, Tasha was living in a motel room, and having 2 adults and a baby in one single room wasn't really the ideal situation either. So there were frequent arguments between Romakia and her mom. Romakia also decided that she didn't like to take her medication on a regular basis because she felt as if it wasn't doing anything. So she would stop taking it, and her mom tried to do everything in her power to try and get her to take them again, but it was just growing tension between the two of them, and their arguments would often escalate until they got physical. In March of 2015, one of their arguments got so bad that Romakia stormed out of the motel room, taking Gierre with her. She also told her mom that she was going to be taking a taxi to go and see James, and her mom Tasha then called James to let him know about this, and James stayed up. He waited and waited for Romakia and his son to show up, but they never did. And understanding how dangerous the situation could be, James got in his car and he started driving around to see if he could find them anywhere. And he did. Romakia, in the middle of an episode, was walking down the highway barefoot in the dark in the freezing cold, holding Gierre in her arms. She told James that she had gotten a taxi, but that once she was sitting inside of it, she felt like people were watching her, and she once again felt like everyone was out to get her and Gierre. And in a panic, she opened up the taxi door while the car was still moving, and she jumped out with Gierre in her arms to walk the rest of the way, even though you could tell she wasn't even really sure where she was going. As soon as James found them, he took them to the hospital, and there it was confirmed that Romakia had not been taking her medication. They were both treated, both released, but that incident only left James and Romakia's mom even more concerned. They had been worried for some time already, but now they feared that Romakia would be capable of putting not only herself but also Gierre in really dangerous situations if she did not take her medicine, and they also knew that getting her to take it was difficult in itself. So that same month, James filed for full custody of Gierre, stating that Romakia was not in the right state of mind to be able to take care of herself, let alone their toddler. Yet for some reason, the courts decided that she was fit to take care of both herself and her 3-year-old son. So they kept joint custody, and Gierre was to spend 1 week with his mom and 1 week with his dad, but only days after that hearing in court, little Gierre would pass away. By May 18th of 2015, Romakia had stopped taking her medication completely, and she was so lost in her own head that her family members did not recognize who she was at all. They tried to help, especially James and her mom, but you can only do so much to try and force an adult to try and get them to do what you want them to do. But Romakia was experiencing extreme hallucinations and delusions, and she thought that her and Gierre were endangered 24/7, that people were out to get them. The following week, Gierre was supposed to spend the week at his father's house, but he would never get to, because on May 20th, Romakia disappeared, and she took Gierre with her. She took her son to the Willis Memorial Park. She walked over to the swing set. She put him on a swing, and she began pushing him on the swing for hours and hours and hours. That entire day, she never stopped pushing. Even once it started to get dark, the temperature started to drop, and eventually it also started to rain, but Romakia continued swinging the swing. The entire day, throughout the night, into the next morning, and into the next day, she never stopped. She kept pushing the swing, and people saw her, but nobody did anything. Nobody wanted to intervene. She kept going, and she later stated that the voices in her head were yelling at her to just keep pushing, and that's exactly what she did. By the next morning, 3-year-old Gierre was unresponsive, and by the second night, he was gone. Romakia did not change her movements once. She didn't stop. She did not move. She did not react, didn't do anything, even after her son was no longer alive. 2 days later, on May 22nd at 7 a.m., finally, someone called the cops to report that Romakia had been standing there in the exact same spot, pushing her son on the swing set for hours, for days. And as soon as the officers got to the park, they knew immediately that Gierre had been gone for hours. He was pronounced deceased at the scene. A medical examiner later ruled that he passed away due to dehydration and low body temperature, and his cause of death was ruled a homicide due to neglect. Even when authorities got there and stopped her, Romakia remained completely numb. She had no reaction to anything. She was completely out of it, unresponsive and unaware of anything happening around her. When James was told that his son was gone, he felt heartbroken. He felt like he had failed his son. He felt devastated that only days before he had tried to argue in court that Romakia was not stable enough to take care of him, and yet the court did not listen to him. All of her other family members were also shocked and sad and mad, and they couldn't make sense of it. Her mom also was drowning in guilt, thinking that she should have done more to help her daughter. Romakia was taken to the hospital, where it was ruled that she was in a complete state of psychosis. Meanwhile, authorities were working on this case, deciding whether or not they were going to be able to find Romakia responsible for this or not because of her mental state. And in July of 2015, Romakia Sims was charged with and reckless endangerment. Evaluations found that she suffered from a mental disorder which at the time of the incident caused her to, quote, lack substantial capacity to appreciate the criminality of her conduct or to conform her behavior to meet the requirements of the law, end quote. And in early 2016, she was found not criminally responsible for her child's under Maryland law. And rather than being sent to a prison, she was sent to a psychiatric hospital for an indefinite period of time or until the doctors ruled that she was no longer a danger to herself and those around her. From